Now, the truth is, most people will never reach the peak of their potential. Now, of course, it would be nice if we all did, but the reality is, most people are not only are they not willing to actually do the things necessary, as in, oh, I want to lose weight. Well, then you've got to work on your diet, you've got to work on exercise, you've got to work on recovery. Not only will they not do those simple basic steps, the other thing that they won't do is take the initial step that's required before all of that. And that is to get in, excuse me, that is to get into what we would call ruthless alignment with self, or into integrity. Now, what it means to be integral is essentially we stop fucking lying. Now, when I say stop lying, of course, there are all kinds of lies. And there are covert lies and there are overt lies, or lies of commission, and lies of omission. So the issue that we tend to have is, of course, many of us sort of tell lies or bend the truth, or it's like the worst one is like, oh, how's things going today? And we're like, yeah, I'm good, when really you're not. So we do that kind of shit. And then, of course, there are just blatant lies like, oh, I'm going to fill the car up with fuel, and really you're going to see some chick that you've been sleeping with for months or whatever. There's that kind of shit too. But the worst lies are the lies you refuse to tell yourself. The lies where you tell yourself and convince yourself that you're fine and you're happy with how things are. Even though you know ultimately on an intellectual level you're not, you acknowledge to some degree that you're not really feeling happy or fulfilled with where you're at, but you won't get clear on how badly it's actually affecting you. Now, if the goal is to live mediocrity, then of course that's not such a big deal, because we can just continue as we are. We don't have to go any further forward than we already have, because mediocrity is what I have, and therefore mediocrity is what I'll settle for. The catch is, deep down, most of us actually want more. But as I say, unless we get ruthlessly integral with ourselves, then unfortunately we're never going to be able to achieve that, because until we recognize the depth of our pit, we can never see the potential of our peak. Now, it's nice to set goals, etc. You know, oh, I want to lose weight, I want to earn more money, I want better relationships, and so on. Like, we all have these dreams or aspirations. But the problem is, if they're built on a foundation of lies or fantasy, where we refuse to tell ourselves the truth about what's really going on, about how we truly feel about what's really going on, and then the truth about what we will actually do about what's happening right now, like, what will I actually do? Because whilst we're sitting here in this lie, where we pretend like things aren't as bad as they really are, we pretend like, oh, you know, as long as I can just about get by, that's all that matters. And that's not. Like, we tell ourselves that shit in order to prevent us having to step up and do the uncomfortable work, such as telling ourselves the truth, such as actually changing our daily behaviors. But the catch is, as we keep saying, is you will end up stuck where you are forever if you're not careful. So we have to, at some point, along with this integrity, we have to actually have the courage to step forward and do that. And until we can be honest with ourselves, we can never truly be honest with anybody else outside of us. We think that we are, because we're telling them the truth based on the current version that we're displaying, but we're not telling them the truth based on the current version of who we really are. When we dig down beneath all the bullshit and the suppression of our feelings and thoughts and the repression of them, once we dig down beyond that and get to the truth, the core of who we really are, then we can actually show people the true version of self. Because instead, what ends up happening is we end up showing the version of us that we think people want to see, or that we think people want to experience. Oh, they want to experience me as this particular type of person. Oh, he's happy, he's go lucky, you know, he's like water off a duck's back and all the rest of it. But the truth is, until we actually acknowledge how bad shit is, we're just going to constantly show up with this false version of us that wants for so much more than we've settled for, but will never have the courage to go and get it. So the first step is integrity. We must get ruthlessly integral with self. We must learn to stop fucking lying, both to ourselves and to others. Now, of course, this doesn't mean, oh, every time someone says you okay, you spill your heart and drown them in your sorrow, so to speak. But it does mean we have to be honest about things, particularly with ourselves, so that we're not just blatantly lying to people. So we have to have the courage to do that. Now, once we've developed this courage to be integral, the next thing that we need to do is develop ownership. Now, with ownership, what we're essentially saying is, okay, well, now I'm ruthlessly integral. I also need to take ruthless responsibility of myself. Now, what this ultimately means is you accept the fact that you are the creator of it all. So everything that's currently going on in your life, whether good, bad, ugly, beautiful, doesn't matter what it is, you are the creator of it. Even if you were to dig down and ultimately it was because this person or this entity did this particular thing, which led me to here, unfortunately, it was how you responded that led you to this point, not necessarily the act or the thing that they did. So we have to acknowledge that, okay, well, actually, it's down to me. Ultimately, it's my fault. Now, that can be a bit of a shitty place for many of us. It's like, what the fuck is my fault? Like, if it's my fault, what can I do? I already feel useless, unworthy, unable, incapable, and so on. So now if it all falls on me, how do I get out of this? But what we have to see is actually when we reframe that, it's more a case of, well, if you created it, you can change it. If you are the reason that things are the way they are, you can be the reason that things will change and become the way you actually want them to be. So that's why it's so essential for us to take ruthless responsibility of self, because the other thing that happens is we get to a point where it no longer matters what goes on outside of us. Doesn't matter what your partner does, your kids, the government, your friends, or anybody else. It doesn't matter what they do, because you are in alignment with yourself, the true version of you. You're also in alignment with exactly what it is you want. And therefore, you're able to sit in that place of responsibility for yourself and therefore choose how you're going to respond to these things rather than just react to them like some kind of victim of external circumstance. Now, there's one final piece to this puzzle. So we've got integrity, we've got courage, and we've got ownership. Now, the final piece is that we have to be, again, willing, or at least have the courage to make ourselves the non-negotiable in our world. Because everything that we do is a result of us. So how I'm showing up for me will dictate what goes on for those who are around me and connected to me. If I want my family to thrive, I must thrive first. If I want to be able to give my all to my partner, to my children, to my business, etc., I have to make sure that I'm showing up as the best version of me, not as some tired, worn out, lethargic version who essentially is a fucking liar because I won't get honest with myself about how I truly feel about where I'm stuck. So I have to become all of these things so that I can show up as the best version of me. Because essentially, if my cup now runneth over, I now have an excess or an abundance that I can share with those around me. So now I can share without feeling like I'm actually taking away or depleting my own resources. Because the catch that we have, even though as a man, there's this part of us that always wants to provide and to protect and to give more to others, like that's a natural urge, a natural desire. But even though it's there, when we know that we are not being served first, it just feels like it's taking more and more away from us. And over time, it begins to feel essentially like we are at the bottom of our to-do list. We feel like we constantly have to sacrifice in order for everyone else to be happy. And it feels like we're taking so much away from ourselves that we begin to have some level of unconscious and subconscious resentment towards these other people, towards these other entities, when in reality, we could just take a step back and completely flip the game. We could say, you know what, along with all these other things that I currently prioritize in my life, what I will also do is now prioritize myself as well so that we can all rise together. There's no point in everything else around me rising and me staying stuck, because if everything else rises above my current capacity, well, I can't lead or manage it now anyway. It's a nice idea to think that I can, and my ego might want to try to do so. But when I'm in that place, instead what I do is lead through tyranny and not through power. And that is a very, very big difference. With tyranny, it's a case of I try to control and manipulate and force you to do things in the way that I want them done. Whereas if I'm standing up as a leader who's in power, instead I can encourage and I can obviously help and guide you to do certain things, but it's not from a place of force. It's from a place of also wanting you to rise alongside me, not to keep me elevated above you in order to make me feel powerful because you're all my subordinates and I'm the tyrannical king of the castle and so on. So those are our 4 steps. The first thing that we need to do if we truly want to reach our potential is to get ruthlessly integral with self. We have to have the courage to do that and, of course, to then act in alignment with the things that we want. Once we begin acting, we must take ruthless ownership or ruthless responsibility of self so that we continue to show up for ourselves on a daily basis. And we accept the fact that we are the foundation of our reality. Everything I create, whether good or bad, comes down to me. Therefore, if it's not what I want, I can change it. If it is what I want, I can maintain it. And then finally, I make those first three pieces of the puzzle non-fucking negotiable. I make me the center of my non-negotiables, and therefore everything else grows as a result of my growth, rather than me feeling like I'm withering away and being burdened or being smothered by everything else I'm trying to hold up and maintain and keep going. Instead, we all rise together because I've learned how to operate from a place of power and not from a place of struggle and victimhood and entitlement. So that's my video for you guys tonight. If you have any questions on this, drop your comments below. If you also want to share some of your own experiences around these types of things, maybe you've been struggling with yourself, maybe you know that actually perhaps I have been fucking lying to myself, not only about what I really want from life, but also where I am. Maybe things are worse than you're willing to admit to yourself, and that's fine. Like, it's not a problem for things to be worse. It's a problem to ignore the fact that things are worse and not actually do anything about it. But we can't truly do anything and consistently continue doing those things until we get ruthlessly honest with ourselves about what the fuck those things actually are. So that's where I'll leave it with you guys tonight. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And if not, I look forward to chatting with you all in my next video.